We're going to begin this hour, of course, with President Biden's vow to make Russian President Vladimir Putin, in his words, pay a price for his invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Biden told Congress his administration is committed to punishing Russian leaders for their aggression, but he vowed not to send American troops into Ukraine. He also said history would remember the war as having made Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger.
Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong.
Well, that was just one of the many topics the president addressed last night. We're joined now by Republican Senator John Thune. He's from South Dakota, the Senate Minority Whip. Senator, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Gayle. Nice to be with you.
There did seem to be a lot of bipartisan support, bipartisan applause, certainly when it came to how the president, any comments he made about Ukraine and Russia. Do Republicans, for the most part, think he's doing a good job on this?
They do. I mean, I think a lot of Republicans would argue that they were reactive at the beginning, at the early stages, maybe didn't do enough to deter it. But I give the administration credit. I think they've done an exceptional job of rallying our allies. We're seeing a unity that we've never seen before. The president talked about that last night. And when it comes to, putting these punishing economic sanctions on Russia, when it comes to supporting the Ukrainian people, providing military aid so they can defend themselves, we've seen a unity among our NATO allies unlike anything that I've seen in my lifetime. And I'm encouraged by that.
But that said, President Zelensky has said repeatedly, we need help, we need help. The vice president was with us this morning. She said, no way will there be boots on the ground. We saw interviews from Ukraine. A young woman said it's hell here. And when you look at the images, you must feel that too. Yeah. It looks and feels very much like hell. Can you imagine a scenario where we have to say, okay, enough, we have to get involved? Can you see that happening? Well,
I mean, I think if this were to spread, looking at the human suffering, it's heartbreaking. And I think people can see it visually. It's just, it's in front of them all the time. And I think that's rallying the American people. And the leadership of somebody like Zelensky is, I think, inspiring to a lot of Americans as well. The question, of course, obviously always is, what role can the United States play? What role should they play? And what are our interests there? Our interests are clear when it comes to NATO countries. We have an Article 5 requirement and obligation to come in and support them. Ukraine is not currently a NATO ally. Those are hard questions to answer. But I think everything short of putting boots on the ground, we should be doing. And I think the administration gets that. And I think the world community, including countries that typically aren't, willing to come and rally to support something like this, are coming. And we're seeing even the
Switzerland.
Exactly, Switzerland.
Even Switzerland, yeah.
And, and you have Sweden and Finland now want to join NATO, which is something we ought to admit them immediately. But I just think that the world is rallying. And interestingly enough, and this is, I think, really encouraging, people in Russia are pushing back hard against Putin. And at some point, maybe they get to the point where they decide they don't want him on the scene.
Well, certainly the world is watching. The president talked about the unity agenda last night. And that's what I want to talk to you about, the unity agenda. Did you hear anything in his economics plan that you said, okay, I could support that?
Well, I think there were several things I thought that were unity statements. He talked about obviously making sure our kids are back in school and keeping them in school.
Yes.
That was huge. That's something that got a lot of applause on our side. Funding the police, something that was very big on our side. He talked at the end about fighting opioids. That is a killer in this country. We're seeing so many people lost every year as a consequence of that. Supporting our veterans. There were a lot of things in his speech, I think, that were designed to sort of be a unity agenda. There are some differences, obviously, and he kind of did what most presidents do at a State of the Union speech, threw out some red meat. The one issue, Gayle, that I think is going to be really critical going forward, and it bears on the situation that we're talking about with respect to Ukraine, and that's energy and gas prices, which have a choking effect on a lot of people in this country, particularly low and middle income Americans. And Russia's a big producer of oil. So we've got to step up and fill that gap when it comes to liquid fuels.
Yeah, there has to be a way to figure out how do we hurt Russia without hurting us.
Correct.
The other thing I want to want to talk about, speaking of unity, I have to talk about two of your colleagues in the Senate, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, who chose what is believed to be a very inopportune time. I think there's never a good time to heckle during the State of the Union, but certainly the moment that they chose to do it. I'm curious about your reaction to their behavior last night.
Well, I don't think there's any place for that. It's inappropriate. State of the Union speech, whether you agree with the president or not, it is an opportunity to show the American people the respect that the office deserves.
Will Republicans come out publicly and really say, let them know publicly that was not okay to do?
Well, I will see how it unfolds today. Typically the House, will, if there were steps to be taken, the House leadership would probably do that. But I think that there'll be plenty of condemnation from people, colleagues and whatnot, and just a recognition that those types of antics in a setting like that are inappropriate. And I think everybody would agree with that.
He mentioned his Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Johnson. Are you planning to, can you talk about what you're planning to do in terms of voting for her confirmation? Well,
I think everybody, at least right now, is keeping an open mind. She comes to, obviously she's very qualified. I think that we can, establish that right away. The question we will be looking at or questions I should say, judicial philosophy, temperament, whether or not she's going to be somebody who has a judicial philosophy that calls for more intervention, more, I would say, arguing, stepping on the scales one way or the other when it comes to.
But you did point out that Ketanji Brown Jackson, I misspoke, is eminently qualified. So when you say keeping the options open for what?
Well, I think that, again, in my view at least, the criteria I always use is judicial philosophy matters to me. I want judges, when they get on the court, to be people who are going to apply the law and the Constitution in an impartial way, be basically somebody who calls balls and strikes, and not somebody who tries to weigh in with tries to influence with some sort of a political agenda. Issues or cases that come before them. So those are the things I think a lot of us will look at. But I do think that she is going to be somebody who will get, one, fair treatment, respectful treatment. She'll be thoroughly vetted, like all Supreme Court justices or potential justices should be. And so we will make sure that she gets a fair process. Okay, fair and respectful. Yeah. That's a good start. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Senator Thune. Very good to see you. You too, Gayle. Thank you for getting up early. Yeah.